I've got a PC Specialist video for you today, but it's a little bit different to what we're used to. This system behind me on the desk, I put together using the PC Specialist sort of system builder on their website. I chose all the parts individually. It isn't one of their sort of, I suppose it is a pre-built, but it's not a pre-built, if you get what I mean. So that's what I'm going to show you today. We're going to run through the ordering process and how you choose specifically what stuff you want in a computer when you pick one up from PC Specialist. Let's get into the website and have a look at things, shall we? So here we are on the PC Specialist website where you can see loads of different options, configuring a custom PC, laptops, all-in-ones, workstations, servers, and so on and so forth. We're going to obviously do a custom PC. So let's click on that option. And we've got three options: home, office and gaming, gaming and professional, or workstation. I think we're gonna configure something mid-range, so we'll go for gaming / professional and then see what that presents us with. So now we've got options for DDR4 or DDR5 AMD based systems, and then you've got a choice of DDR5 Intel based systems running on different chipsets, either Z790 or Z890. I think we're going to go AMD, as you all probably guessed. So we're going to go definitely AM5, which is a budget, gives you a calculation or a rough idea of how much it's going to cost. If your budget's between £530 to £4,000, that's quite the range, but we'll start with that. And then that should take us through to their actual configurator. So here we are presented with the whole build of the system, starting with number one on the list, which is selecting what case you'd like your system to be built into. So there's quite a few options on the list, or there's a little drop down to choose the manufacturer. And I've had a little browse on here before when I've been reviewing systems and stuff, and I've always liked the look of the ThermalTake tower cases. So I think we're going to go with a Tower 600, which is a vertical layout case. It's something a bit different to the usual fish bowls that we usually see. So we're going to tick that, and it gives you the price underneath, £133. And at the top, you've got a running total of the total cost of your build, or the monthly cost if you choose to get it on finance, with and without VAT. Moving down, we've got processor. So if we click the drop down, you can see you've got AMD Ryzen 5, 7 and 9, as we'd expect to see. I think we're going to go somewhere, we don't need anything crazy. We're heading for a mid-range sort of build. So I think the 9600X will do in this build. So we're going to go with that. And it tells you the clock speeds and how much cache memory it's got, and obviously the socket type as well, just after the component that you choose. Moving down to the motherboard. So we've got options from ASUS and Gigabyte. This list isn't massive, but there's a decent selection of motherboards on there, but obviously only from two different manufacturers. I have had great experiences personally with tough stuff from ASUS in the past. I like the styling of it. I've mentioned that in videos in the past. So I think we're going to go for a tough B850 plus Wi-Fi. It's got a PCIe 5 slot. I don't know whether we'll use that in the budget that we're going for today. It's got Wi-Fi 7. I think that'll be plenty for the build that we've got going on. So then looking at memory, it's good that we get to choose our own this time around, as this is very often something that I have a little moan about in my review videos. So we're going to look for something 6000 megahertz and CL30 timings. You can see in the list we've got options from PC Specialist and then a lot of different options from Corsair. Again, only the two different manufacturers to choose from, but there's plenty on offer to match the system that we're going for. So we're going to scroll down to the DDR5 6000 megahertz memory section. We've got Vengeance, RGB and non-RGB. We're going to go for the RGB option, I think. We're going to go 6000 megahertz CL30, 2 times 16 gigabyte running in dual channel. Then we move down to look at graphics card, which is going to be the most expensive piece in the system, the most expensive component in the system by a long way, as we all kind of know. So if we click on the drop down menu, we're presented with a list. there's options from NVIDIA, AMD, and you've got Intel Arc, and then down at the bottom you've got professional graphic solutions for anyone looking to build like a workstation for any sort of graphical rendering and stuff like that. And you also have the option to exclude the graphics card if you've already got one and you want to just stick your graphics card in after you get the PC. So that's nice to see down at the bottom. But I think for this build, we're going to go with an AMD, all AMD build. So the 9060 XT, the 16GB one, don't worry, Dom, that's looking like a decent option. So we'll click on that. And then it gives you an option underneath that to choose which specific graphics card you want. The Gigabyte one, that's good with me. We don't need to change to the Sapphire one. It increases the price a little bit. It's probably a better card, but the Gigabyte one's going to be fine as well. So we'll leave that on that. Second graphics card or third graphics card, we don't need none of that stuff. And the graphics card support bracket, you can add in ARGB options, but we're going to leave it as default. I don't think that card's going to be massive, so we won't really need one. Then we come to kind of the non-core components. This core components section, so you've got case at the top, then you choose your core components as we scroll down, and then you choose your storage and whether you want a memory card reader. So for storage, I don't want to skimp out. We've got options from Crucial, we've got options from Corsair, we've got options from Samsung, Solidigm, and then of course PCSpecialist's own hard drives, as we saw in the last review that I did. We're going to go for a Samsung 990 Pro. It's a very, very good drive. It's got a very good reputation for a reason, and we need a 2TB one. That drive may be a bit overkill, but I like having a solid foundation for storing stuff, especially on a brand new computer. You don't want to run out of space. That's the last thing you want. It's a bit disappointing when you have to uninstall stuff to reinstall stuff. So we're going with that 990 Pro, a very good hard drive. It's got a very good reputation for a reason. There is a second M.2 SSD slot available, which we could populate, but we're going to leave that for now. That can be done down the line if we want to. Then scrolling down, we can add in mechanical drives or extra SSDs like SATA SSDs if we want to. We can choose to configure RAID if we had the correct drives in the system. Add in a Blu-ray drive. There's loads of options, external hard drives, external disk drives, memory card readers. We're going to leave all of that today, but it is there as an option when you spec a PC from PCSpecialist if you want to add any of that stuff on. So moving down from section 2 then to section 3, which is power and cooling. So we've moved through case, core components, storage and optical drives and memory card readers and that sort of stuff. Now we're on to power and cooling. So starting with the power supply, one of the most important components in a PC. You want clean, consistent power to keep all of your components safe. So we're going to go for, there's only options from Corsair. I think they should flesh that out a little bit, but we're going to go for a 750 watt will be plenty in this build. We're going to go for the RMX series though, which is fully modular. It's got Cybernetics gold rating, so we'll tick that. The price is updating. We're now at £1,580 as the graphics card really bumped up the price. Scrolling down, you can change what power lead comes with the PC. There's European options, Swiss options, US options. And then you've got braided power supply cables like extension kits. You can add those on. There's Corsair options there if you want them. ARGB, the Lian Li streamer wireless power supply cables. You can add those on if you want. And then we come to the processor cooling, which of course isn't optional. And when you click on that, you're presented with a nice menu that shows you actually what the coolers look like. So I think we're going to go for, it's a bit overkill for the processor we've got, very overkill to be fair, but we're going to go for the FrostFlow 360 AIO ARGB cooler just to add a bit of balance. We've gone with RGB memory. The case will kind of showcase the cooler a bit. So we're going to go for a 360mm AIO, and it's going to have RGB, and I've used that in previous reviews and it's always performed well. Moving down, we've got thermal paste. You can pay a little bit extra if you want and add some better thermal paste. You can add extra options like ARGB strips and stuff like that to the case to just make it look nicer. We're not going to add any extra case fans this time around, but if you click into the menu, it's similar to the cooler menu. You've got pictures of what the fans actually look like, so you can better match them to your build. Scrolling down to section 4, we've got system refinements, which is where you can choose stuff like sound cards, external sound cards, network cards, wireless cards. The motherboard we've chosen, this is costing us £23 to have this Intel wireless card installed in the system, but the motherboard we've chosen has Wi-Fi built in. So we're going to click on that, and then you can choose to go with no network card because the motherboard's got it on. And if I was to leave that on and press proceed anyway, it would come up and tell us that the motherboard has Wi-Fi, so you don't need to pay the extra for that Wi-Fi card, which is a really nice touch from PC Specialist. They could just charge you the extra money and put it in anyway, but it's nice for them to, it will stop conflicts between the two wireless options in the computer, but it saves you a bit of money as well, so it's nice that they just warn you that you don't actually need that. So we'll click on non or onboard Wi-Fi, which is what we've got with that motherboard. Then you can choose to add all sorts of other stuff, like you've got options for routers and power line adapters, that sort of stuff if you need any of that, capture cards, external capture cards, Firewire cards, and all that good stuff. So you can really order a system that's set up exactly. If you're starting from scratch and you've got nothing and say you want to stream, you want to add a capture card on, you can add that on if you need to. And then scrolling down to section 5, we've got operating system and software. So all of their systems come with Windows 11 64-bit, the home version, installed by standard. You can choose to upgrade it to professional. Obviously, it will cost you a little bit more, or you can click on no operating system required, which you don't have to pay for the license then, if that's something you want to do. We're going to leave this on Windows 11 Home though. Antivirus as well, free 90-day license for Norton. No one needs that. So we're going to just drop that down and click on no antivirus software, because if we'll sort the problems out as and when they arise, if they arise, not that they will. And below that, you've got an option to choose your default browser. So I use Chrome personally. I'm going to click on Chrome, and then the PC should arrive with Chrome set as the default browser and Chrome installed. Then below that, section 6, you've got peripherals and accessories, where you can add monitors, monitor cables, monitor mounts, keyboards, mice, all that sort of stuff, headsets, chairs. There's pretty much everything. And then finally down at the bottom, we have delivery and services, where I mention the warranty quite often in the videos. They all come with a 3-year standard warranty, which, as you can see there, includes 6 months of collect and return, 1 year of parts cover, and 3 years of labour. You can upgrade that to have varying different levels of cover if you want to, and by paying a bit extra up to their platinum warranty. We're going to leave it on standard, and they also offer a home installation as well, where a technician can come and set it up for you, but we're not interested in any of that sort of stuff, so we're going to leave that. And then delivery, standard delivery. Build time, you can pay to have them build it a bit quicker if you want to. If you want it in 1 working day for dispatch time, that'll cost you an extra £100, but we're going to leave it as standard and leave the quantity as 1. So that's the PC Specialist configurator in its full in-depth detail and glory. Once you've finished your system, at the top it'll tell you the price. In this instance, it's £1,592. You click on proceed, and the system, the website, will check everything. Like in this instance, it's saying we've selected a 750 watt power supply, but we only need a 550 watt power supply. But we need a good bit of headroom for future upgrades, and I think 750 watt is about the right level that I'd go with on a PC like this. And then at the end it does say there, although it's not mandatory requirement to select a lower wattage power supply, doing so will save you money, and the last thing we want to do is overcharge you, which again, that's a really nice touch from PC Specialist, but we're going to ignore it and we want to pay for that 750 watt power supply. You press proceed, and then you're presented with a picture of the case and a list of the specs that you've chosen for your system, and a total of the cost and an estimate of the lead time. So this system is going to cost us £1,592, and the current estimated lead time is 4 to 6 working days. So we'll get this system ordered, get PC Specialist to build it and send it over to us, and I will be back when the system has arrived, and we'll have a look at it, have a look at how they've put it together, what it's like, the quality that they've got, and then we'll test it as we usually do with all of our PC Specialist systems that we get for review, and see how good it is. So here is the system that we just spec'd up on PC Specialist website. We're not going to go through the specs in mega detail because I've just been through them when we looked at them on the website. But to summarise them quickly, you've got a Ryzen 9600X, that's 6-core 12-thread processor, a 9060 XT graphics card, an ASUS TUF B850 motherboard, the Tower 600 case, as I mentioned a minute ago, a 750-watt Corsair power supply, and then 32 gig of 6000 mega transfer CL30 Corsair Vengeance memory. So the spec is all spot on. Everything is exactly as I chose it to be when I spec'd it on the website. So we'll do things a little bit backwards to how we usually do. We're going to take more of a deeper look at how they've put it together, the configuration that they've chosen with this case, as I chose it because I think it looks nice, but it also has quite a wide variety of options of fan placement. Not that we included any extra fans, which I kind of did on purpose. The GPU orientation can be switched around. So we'll pop the top case off. And in fact, we'll take all the side panels off. So the AIO has been installed on your right-hand side or the left-hand side of the case for me. And the fans have been installed in an outtake and exhaust setup, as the top fans are also set for exhaust. So as it stands, and this is interesting, this wasn't pointed out when I spec'd the system on the website, there is no intake, which could be a problem. I haven't noticed any problems while I've been using it and testing it and stuff, but there's no air coming into the case anywhere. There is space for fans on the back of the case, which I'll show you in some B-roll. There's space on the opposite side to the radiator, and then there's space at the bottom for them to stick some fans in. I didn't include them on the specs, or didn't technically pay for them, so I can understand why they're not there, but it would have been nice to have seen something saying there's no intake fans, you need a few more fans, or they could have set the radiator fans to be intake, to take air in and then feed it up to the top. I mean, these two massive 140mm fans that come pre-installed on the ThermalTake 600 will be drawing air up through the it's kind of like a chimney, I suppose, this case. It will be taking air out and pushing it out of the top, but there's no air being fed in from anywhere else. There is a lot of ventilation on this case, so they will be getting air from somewhere, obviously, but it would have been nice to see a little pop-up menu, as I mentioned, just saying you might want to stick a few more case fans on. Let's get rid of all the glass so we can get a better look inside at the cables and stuff. So, having a look at the case, there's the GPU, as you can see there, it can either be installed in that kind of standard orientation that you can see now, or you can have it kind of in display mode with it facing more horizontally on and facing the front of the case. That also wasn't an option. It'd be nice to see stuff like that in cases that support it, what orientation you'd like the GPU in. But as you can see, in that orientation, there's absolutely no room at all. You can remove this panel there by the looks of those two screws. That would free up some space. But that must have been a bit of a challenge getting that installed in there. And it's part of the reason why I chose this case. I like the looks of it, and it's also a bit different. So it would have been a bit different from the standard run-of-the-mill builds that they're putting out, the builders at PC Specialist. Looking at all the connectors, everything's installed properly. The cable management is decent, but I think I would have liked to have seen the AIO pump cable could probably have been routed a bit tidier through this side cable management hole on the motherboard tray, rather than going down and through the same sort of holes where the motherboard power and CPU power cables are coming from. But other than that, it looks quite tidy. Everything's been routed quite well. I'll spin it around so we can look at the back. Remove that panel as well. Yeah, there's zip ties used where they need to be. These cables you might think look a bit messy, but that's been done intentionally. That's so you can undo these two thumb screws, lift up the plate or panel, whatever you want to call it, that hold the top outtake exhaust fans, and you can bend them over, which gives access to the motherboard I/O, which is inside the case, which I've never used this case personally before. That is a very, very frustrating thing when you're wanting to plug stuff in and out all the time. So you can get annoyed by it if you're forever disconnecting and connecting stuff from your computer. Not that everyone is, but some people do, I suppose. But then looking at the rest of the cable management, lots of cable ties used around the PSU cables and stuff. They've been routed nicely up the side of the case and hidden quite well. I suppose they haven't got too much of a cable travel on this case to get to the motherboard, so there is quite a lot of slack to manage there, and I think PC Specialist have done a good job of managing all that stuff there. So overall, let me turn that around. Overall, I'm as impressed as I usually am with PC Specialist machines. It's been put together well. That cable could be a little bit neater, but I'm nitpicking. That's a tiny little thing. I mean, I could reroute it, but I wanted to leave it exactly as they put it together. The only slight thing that disappointed me is someone who didn't know about case and fan orientation in specific cases wouldn't know that this case doesn't come with anything other than 2 exhaust fans on the top, and you're definitely going to want a few for intake. So picking up a 3-pack of fans, the website telling you, oh, you might want to add some intake fans on this side, or even in the bottom, or a few exhausts in the back, and switching some of the others around, maybe switching the radiator around to intake, switching these around. There's a lot of different fan configurations, and it would have been nice to be able to choose specifically what you want, as well as choosing the GPU installation orientation. But other than that, it's a pretty solid build, as I've come to expect from PC Specialist. It's been put together well, and the GPU, that tolerance there, the fit there, I did not do that on purpose. That just happens to be that perfect of a fit. So let's put it through some gaming and some benchmarks and look at the usual stuff we do in our PC reviews and see how this thing performs. If you're looking for a new chair, then definitely go and check out boolies.co.uk. They offer a whole host of gaming and office chairs that come in a variety of different finishes and different colours. Moving in to look at gaming then, and we're starting with Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, an absolutely cracking game. All the games that I tested on the system were running at 1440p with absolute maximum settings and no FSR or frame gen unless I otherwise state it in the video, which there's a couple of games coming up that tests out those settings. But this is running rasterized 1440p, and the FPS meter is sitting just under 70, which this is quite a demanding title, so it hitting that level of performance was a little bit shocking, to be fair. And it just goes to show that you don't need to go all out to get decent performance in the latest titles. The performance doesn't change much when we move down from the ramparts from shooting the crossbow in the opening scene of the game to there's a few more particle effects when the enemy are attacking this gate. When we move up to the ramparts to engage in some sword play, the FPS meter does increase slightly, pushing up to nearly 80 with 12.5 to 13 milliseconds frame time. So this is definitely a very, very playable experience, and I'd be more than happy to enjoy this game at this sort of level of performance. Next up is F125, a game that runs really smoothly on pretty much anything I've ever tested it on. You can see using the game built-in benchmark that the FPS meter starts out at around 170 before pushing up to between 180 to sometimes hitting nearly 200 FPS when using some of the different views in the game, particularly when you're in like the cockpit view. That seems to give a nice bump to FPS. Frame time here is around 5 to 6 milliseconds, sometimes dipping out or pushing above that range, but overall the game runs and performs and looks really, really good. This is at 1440p again, like I mentioned, with every setting absolutely maxed. There's no ray tracing turned on here, no FSR and no frame gen, so this is just pure rastered performance out of the 9600X and the 9060 XT GPU combo. Now we have Hogwarts Legacy, a really, really nice looking game that can be quite demanding, to be fair, as we can see by the 25.5 gigabytes of RAM being used just standing in Hogsmeade. I like to use Hogsmeade as a test for this game in my reviews, as there's quite a varying amount of different lighting conditions. There's a lot of shadows and a lot of NPCs walking around and interacting with different characters and stuff like that. But running around Hogsmeade, saw the FPS meter sitting between 70 to 80 FPS with 12.5 roughly milliseconds of frame time. This is a genuinely pleasing result, and I'd be happy to play this game at this level. Now, with all the Battlefield hype surrounding the release of Battlefield 6 and the announcements that have been going on, I thought I'd jump back into some Battlefield 2042 to get back into it while I wait for the new game to be released. Performance here at 1440p with absolutely maximum rasterized settings was around the 130 FPS mark, with around 8 to 9 on average milliseconds of frame time. This is a really pleasing result, and you can see the graphics, when you can see further out into the landscape, are pretty stunning on what was a pretty disappointing game when it came out. Moving into some faster paced gameplay, we're using the Jeep trying to run people over. Doesn't see much of a difference to performance. The frame time remains about the same, and the FPS hovers around the 120 to 130 mark. Now, you knew this was coming. We move into Cyberpunk 2077, probably the most demanding title on the list, you could argue. FPS, when at 1440p Ultra, was around 50 to 55, sometimes pushing almost to 60 FPS, which I don't really find that a playable experience, especially on a PC. You want to be hitting 60 FPS. So luckily, we can use FSR and FrameGen to push things up, and enabling those two settings sees the FPS almost triple, moving up to 150 FPS with the same 1440p Ultra settings, and the frame time is around 6 milliseconds. This game just looks glorious when you run it on high settings, and the reflections and all that sort of stuff really highlight what makes it such a demanding title. But 160 FPS on this GPU and CPU combo was definitely quite surprising, and I would love to play this game on this computer at this sort of performance level. Moving into the last title in the video then, which is Black Myth Wukong, using the game's built-in benchmark, and out of the box with ultra settings it runs between 30 to 40 FPS, which is nowhere near what I'd want to see, as I mentioned earlier. Frame time as well was around 30 milliseconds, which is a lot higher than I'd like to see. This title luckily also supports FSR and FrameGen though, which turning that on sees the FPS double. It's not quite as big a jump as we saw in Cyberpunk, but the FPS does go north of the 60 mark, and hence the frame time roughly halves because of the frame rate doubling. RAM usage was around 14.5 gig, and you can see from the CPU and GPU usage percentages, we're pushing the workload onto the GPU. The CPU's not really having to do much, so that says a lot about CPU choices in gaming computers as a whole. You don't need mega loads of cores if you're playing at a higher resolution. This 9600X seems to be able to handle this level of gaming with this level of graphical fidelity pretty easily, and the strain is on the graphics card. Moving in to look at CPU performance in a Cinebench R23 multi-core run then, and we can see that the CPU does boost to hit 5.45 GHz on all cores before dropping to around 4.8 GHz, and that's with the CPU temperature hitting a peak of 63 degrees and maintaining an average of 61 degrees over a 30-minute run, and that's with CPU package power usage peaking at 88 watts while averaging around about the same, 87 watts. And in single core, the performance was pretty much the same. The CPU does boost up to its 5.45 GHz maximum, and it does maintain it this time around though, as we often see in single core runs, and that's with the CPU temperature peaking a little bit higher at 66 degrees with an average of 58 degrees over that same 30-minute sustained benchmark, with the CPU using around 48 watts of power on average and peaking at 68 watts during its initial sort of boost period. Looking at GPU temperatures in Cyberpunk 2077 then, this is after around 30 minutes of the game running with the system in its kind of stock setup with the fans, with just those two 140mm fans on the top of the case as exhaust. The GPU temperature reads 60 degrees, whereas the GPU memory and GPU hotspot sensors are both sitting around 80 degrees. Taking a deeper look at that with the thermal camera and then looking inside the case, this is around 5 minutes of thermal video captured and sped up, so you can see the heat building up on the motherboard and on the GPU in the capture on the right. We can see that the GPU temperature is sitting around 50 degrees after a sustained gaming period, and the motherboard temperature at the top of the pump cap is around 31. I also wanted to test the system with the two 140mm case fans positioned at the bottom of the case for air intake. As I mentioned, there was no intake earlier in the video. This didn't have any sort of positive effect though. As we can see from this same bit of test in Cyberpunk, the GPU temperature was 2 degrees higher, and as were the hotspot and memory. And here's what the system sounds like with its default out of the box fan setup. So there we have it then. That was the rundown of the PC Specialist kind of customization process and what you can do and what you can choose when you pick up a PC from them. Because the PCs we've looked at in the past have all been pre-built specs and a spec list that's sent out to us, and then we've reviewed it. So I felt like doing something for a bit of a change, just to keep you guys interested and let you know just how far you can go with the customization when you pick something up. So, talking about this PC specifically, I think they built it well. It was a bit of a out-of-the-box sort of system compared to the things that they usually send to us. This case is a bit unusual compared to the usual square fish tanks that we see all the time nowadays. The cable management and the build and the prep and everything was all done pretty well. And I think for a 1500 quid computer, which is latest gen mid-range, which sounds a bit crazy saying that now, but that's here we are in 2025 when everything costs a fortune. I think it performed pretty well, especially when you use some of the newer bells and whistles that AMD have got now, frame gen and FSR and that sort of stuff. This PC will definitely give you hours and hours of entertainment. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Please leave a like down below if you did. Don't forget to subscribe to Kit Guru for the latest PC gaming news and reviews. And if you go down below the video's description, you can pick yourself up a hoodie like this or a t-shirt from our merch store. And then in the video's description, you'll find links to our Discord server, our Patreon page and our website if you want to check any of that stuff out. Anyway, guys, I've been Matt. This has been, it hasn't got a name, this is the Kit Guru Special 2000, a look at PC Specialist configurator. I'll catch you in the next one. Look after yourselves. See you later.